Hello everyone, welcome to the fourth episode in this series where we aim to explore the history of Serbia from prehistory up to the present day. In the previous episode, we learned how the coastal Serbian state of Duklja, approximately modern-day Montenegro, under the leadership of the Vojslavljević Dynasty, attempted to secure independence from the Byzantine Empire in the 11th century. Then we shifted our attention to the Vukanović Dynasty, a cadet branch of the Vojslavljević family who controlled the Raška region in what is now southwestern Serbia, and continued the same struggle in the 12th century through a strategic alliance with another powerful neighbor, the Kingdom of Hungary. When we left off in 1165, both Duklja and Raška were still vassals of the Byzantine Empire, and the Byzantines had just captured and imprisoned the last ruler of Raška from the Vukanović dynasty. This created an opportunity for another family to seize power. This family, the Nemanjić Dynasty, would leave a lasting legacy and lay the foundations of the modern Serbian national identity. Unlike the previous dynasties, which commanded limited resources and spent most of their strength trying to survive in the ever-turbulent Balkan geopolitical landscape, leaving rather little in terms of cultural heritage and being mostly forgotten until the 19th century historians rediscovered them, the Nemanjić dynasty broke away from Byzantine suzerainty, established a proper government apparatus, created long-lasting institutions such as the Serbian Orthodox Church, and at one point even attempted to claim the Byzantine Empire itself. I hope you will join me in exploring how the Nemanjić rulers of medieval Serbia achieved all of this. Let us begin. Stefan Nemanja, the founder of the Nemanjić dynasty, was the fourth son of Zavida, a member of the Vukanović dynasty. This means that the Nemanjić family was its cadet branch, although it is unclear where Zavida should be placed on the Vukanović family tree. Stefan Nemanja was born around 1113 in Ribnica, now known as Podgorica, the capital of modern-day Montenegro. This was 1 year after the death of Grand Prince Vukan, who was succeeded by Uroš I, the son of his brother Marko. Stefan Nemanja's son, Stefan I Crowned, wrote that due to a struggle for the throne of Raška, Zavida had moved to his relatives in Duklja and returned to Raška after the situation had calmed down. Based on this, we can assume that Zavida was a descendant of Vukan or Marko, and therefore a potential heir to the throne who was unsuccessful in taking it for himself. When Grand Prince Desa Vukanović was imprisoned by the Byzantines in 1165, the new ruler of Raška became Stefan Nemanja's eldest brother, Tihomir. However, Tihomir would be deposed by Nemanja after about a year. There are two likely causes for the conflict between the brothers. One was jealousy over Nemanja's greater degree of autonomy, as, apart from controlling some territory in eastern Raška, he also held lands in the Byzantine Empire granted to him by Emperor Emanuel I, which could be inherited by his descendants only, excluding his elder brothers. Another possible cause was Nemanja's own lust for power. It is likely that, after the fall of Desa, as a direct vassal of Emanuel I, he expected to be appointed Grand Prince, but was passed over in favor of Tihomir. Initially, Tihomir and the other two brothers, Miroslav and Stratimir, held the upper hand and imprisoned Nemanja. However, he escaped and took control of Raška. Supported by Emanuel I, the three elder brothers attempted to dethrone Nemanja, but in 1168, at the Battle of Pantina in the Kosovo region, Tihomir died and Nemanja emerged victorious, forcing Miroslav and Stratimir to reconcile with him. After his victory, Nemanja recognized Emanuel I as his suzerain, but when war erupted between the Empire and Venice in 1171 over a trade dispute, he seized the opportunity to rebel. This proved to be a mistake, as the Venetians were quickly defeated, allowing the Byzantines to turn their attention to Nemanja. Faced with an overwhelming Byzantine force, Nemanja surrendered and was taken to Constantinople to be paraded in front of the crowds in the same manner as the leaders of conquered peoples during their height of Roman power. Yet, somehow, he convinced Emanuel I to forgive him and reinstate him as Grand Prince, remaining loyal until the emperor's death in 1180. When a succession crisis engulfed Constantinople after Emanuel's death, Stefan Nemanja was quick to exploit this situation, but in the meantime, he had devoted himself to strengthening his authority at home. Whereas previous dynasties had a rather limited economic base at their disposal, things seem to have changed in the second half of the 12th century, as Stefan Nemanja and his two remaining brothers could both finance wars against the Byzantines and an extensive church and monastery construction program. It was this practice of church patronage, known as ktitoship in the Orthodox world, that became the foundation upon which the power and authority of the Nemanjić dynasty were built. A strong, well-funded church could use its influence among the general populace to bolster a ruler's legitimacy, which translated into greater political control and the centralization of power, a necessity for establishing a stable government. Since churches, and especially monasteries, were centers of learning and important economic factors in the Middle Ages, the precursors of modern-day institutions such as the formal education system, public healthcare, and various scientific and cultural establishments, they were crucial for administration, economic development, and the general improvement of life. Stefan Nemanja began to nurture strong ties with the church even before he became Grand Prince, and during the peace imposed by Manuel I, he stamped out the heresy of Bogomilism and completed one of his most famous zadužbine, or endowments, the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Đurđevi Stupovi. This monastery, along with many others constructed in the 12th and 13th centuries, is representative of the Raška school of architecture, a style that blends elements of Byzantine and Western Romanesque art, reflecting Serbia's status as a land on the border between the Orthodox and Catholic worlds. But now, let us turn our attention back to the military aspects of Nemanja's rule. Manuel I Komnenos, considered by some the last truly powerful Byzantine, that is, Roman emperor, was succeeded by the underage Alexios II. This resulted in struggles between Byzantine officials who sought to control the young ruler, and the resulting instability quickly translated into trouble on imperial borders. In Asia Minor, the Seljuk Turkish Sultan, Kilij Arslan II, attacked the empire, while in the north, the Hungarians, previously forced by Manuel I to yield territory and enter into a form of vassalage, took the region of Srem and parts of Dalmatia held by the Byzantines. They were joined by Kulin, the Ban, that is, Duke of Bosnia, who also renounced vassal obligations towards the empire. In 1182, the Hungarians attacked Belgrade and the fortress of Braničevo, and in 1183, Stefan Nemanja joined them. The Hungarian and Serbian forces captured Niš and the area around the modern-day Bulgarian capital, Sofia. At the same time, Nemanja laid claim to Duklja, basing it on his descent from the Dukljan Vojslavljević dynasty, and began the conquest of this region from his distant cousin Mihailo III. This campaign culminated in the seizure of the fortified coastal cities, which had, ever since the Slavic settlement of the Balkans some 600 years earlier, remained part of the Byzantine Empire. The only coastal city Nemanja failed to take was Dubrovnik. After several attempts, he made peace with the city, which involved signing a trade agreement. Dubrovnik would play a crucial role in Serbia's economic development throughout the rest of the Middle Ages, serving as the main avenue of trade between Serbia and the Mediterranean world. Dubrovnik is also significant for Serbian historiography, as its archives contain many original documents that proved invaluable for reconstructing medieval Serbian history in the 19th and 20th centuries. Stefan Nemanja's forces also advanced southward. During the 1180s, he occupied Hvosno, now known as Metohija, as well as Kosovo, the South Morava Valley, and the area around Skopje. He owed much of his success to the mounting troubles that the Byzantines were facing. In 1185, the Normans of southern Italy, a bitter rival of the empire, invaded once again, capturing the strategic stronghold of Dyrrhachium and marching all the way to the Great Thessaloniki, second only to Constantinople, which they brutally sacked. Although the Norman threat was soon neutralized, as they had overextended themselves and were forced to abandon their conquests, this was a painful blow to the empire, compounded by a rebellion in Bulgaria in the same year, which led to the restoration of the Bulgarian Empire. All of this greatly contributed to the downfall of the infamous Andronikos Komnenos, who had deposed his nephew Alexios II in 1183, and to the proclamation of Isaac II Angelos as emperor. In 1189, the new emperor faced yet another challenge, the 100,000-strong Crusader army of the German Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, on its way to retake Jerusalem, which the Muslim leader Saladin had captured in 1187. The Byzantines suspected that the true target of the German army was not Jerusalem but Constantinople. This distrust poisoned relations between the two powers almost as soon as the Crusaders crossed from Hungary into Byzantine territory near Belgrade, which the Byzantines had regained after Isaac II's marriage to the daughter of the Hungarian king. Stefan Nemanja sought to use this to his advantage. Unlike the Byzantines, he prepared a lavish welcome for the Germans in Niš, where he planned to move his capital due to the city's strategic and symbolic significance. Namely, Niš was a crossroads of routes leading to Constantinople, Thessaloniki, Belgrade, and the Adriatic Sea, while also being renowned as the birthplace of Constantine the Great, the first Christian Roman emperor. Although Nemanja established cordial relations with Frederick Barbarossa, he ultimately failed to persuade the German ruler to aid him against the Byzantines. Still, this encounter further inflamed Byzantine suspicions regarding the Crusaders' true intentions, causing clashes between German and Byzantine troops that prevented Isaac II from acting against Nemanja. However, when Barbarossa drowned while crossing a river in Asia Minor in 1190, the Byzantines could breathe a sigh of relief and turn what strength they had left to recovering lost territories. They first tried to deal with the Bulgarians, but failed. However, they were more successful against Stefan Nemanja, defeating him in the Battle of the Morava River in 1190. Still, unlike his earlier defeat, this one did not result in him being paraded through the streets of Constantinople. It appears that he still had some strength left, which led to negotiated peace. Although he had to relinquish a larger part of his conquests, including his intended capital, Niš, he had nonetheless achieved much. In the west, he had secured access to the sea and trade with the wealthy Italian city-states via Dubrovnik and other coastal cities, while in the east he was no longer confined to the mountainous Raška, as he now controlled the large and fertile plains of Hvosno and Kosovo, along with an even greater portion of the Morava River system, where agriculture was more productive and could sustain a larger population. He also gained something else, prestige. To cement the peace, Emperor Isaac II offered an honor previously reserved only for the most powerful rulers, a marriage between an imperial princess and Nemanja's second son, Stefan. This greatly enhanced Nemanja's standing both within Serbia and abroad, as it effectively amounted to his recognition by the emperor as an independent ruler. Stefan Nemanja remained at the helm of Serbia for 6 more years, devoting them to strengthening his dynasty's authority and building churches. By this time, he was around 80 years old and probably weary of ruling. In 1196, he decided to abdicate and become a monk in his monastery of Studenica, taking the name Simeon. Not long after becoming a monk, he left Serbia to join his youngest son, Rastko, on Mount Athos, a peninsula in northern Greece that remains an important center of Orthodox monasticism due to the large number of monasteries located there affiliated with different national Orthodox churches. One of those monasteries is Hilandar, the last zadužbina of Stefan Nemanja, and probably the holiest of all Serbian monasteries due to its monks' immense contribution to the Orthodox cause in Serbia. It was there that Stefan Nemanja passed away in 1199 at the age of 86. Before continuing with the events in Serbia following Stefan Nemanja's departure, I would like to briefly introduce Rastko Nemanjić, whose life and deeds are arguably as important, if not more important, for Serbian history and national identity as those of his father. As the ruler's son, upon reaching maturity, Rastko was granted a governorship, but when an opportunity presented itself, he renounced his titles and privileges and fled to Mount Athos, where he became a monk, taking the name Sava, under which he is far better known. His work in establishing the autocephalous Serbian Church solidified Orthodox Christianity in Serbia, while his efforts to promote literacy and his personal piety continue to serve as an example of how to live in the service of one's community. It is therefore no surprise that, upon his death, he was canonized and is celebrated to this day as the patron saint of the Serbian people and of education, with pageants held in his honor in schools each year. Now, let us turn our attention back to the events in Serbia. When Stefan Nemanja abdicated, the throne of Serbia did not pass to his eldest son, Vukan, but rather to his second, Stefan. This seems to have been one of the terms of the peace treaty with the Byzantines, who insisted that Stefan, the son-in-law of Alexios III, emperor from 1195, become the new ruler. The marriage of Stefan and the Byzantine princess Eudokia appears to have been unhappy, likely due to a clash of cultures. Although Serbia belonged to the Byzantine cultural sphere, its capital, Ras, was probably a poor and austere place, unfit for a noble woman accustomed to the luxuries and splendor of Constantinople, the queen of cities. Around 1200, when his father-in-law, Alexios III, was preoccupied with internal and external crises, Stefan divorced Eudokia and banished her. His elder brother, Vukan, dissatisfied with being denied the crown, used this scandal to slander him and strengthen his own claim to the throne. In 1202, with Hungarian support, Vukan deposed Stefan and became Grand Prince of Serbia. The conflict between Stefan and the Hungarians had been brewing for years by that point. The 12th century alliance between the Serbs and their northern neighbors had fallen apart largely because of Stefan Nemanja's partial seizure of the strategic South and Great Morava valleys. Throughout the 12th century, the Hungarians had sought to wrest control of this corridor from the Byzantines, a crucial link between the Pannonian Plain and the great port city of Thessaloniki, and it was now Serbia that stood in the way of their territorial aspirations. The enmities had begun in 1198, when the younger brother of the Hungarian king Emmerich, Andrew, the Ban of Croatia, occupied parts of Zahumlje. Likely in response to this, Stefan began corresponding with Pope Innocent III, requesting to be elevated to the rank of king. He probably hoped that such a move would lead to an alliance with the Pope and prevent further Hungarian incursions. The same request came from Vukan, who was already the titular king of Duklja, because this was the key territory within his governorship. Despite his close ties to the Catholic Church through the Catholic clergy of Duklja and the Hungarian support, Vukan never received the royal crown from the Pope, as his stay on the Serbian throne was brief. The Hungarian occupation of Serbia seems to have upset the balance of power in the Balkans, prompting other rulers to take action. Kulin, the Ban of Bosnia, already Vukan's enemy since the Serbian prince had complained to the Pope about his tolerance of Bogomils and other heretics, tried to reject Hungarian suzerainty. He was probably also motivated by familial ties, as his sister had been the wife of Stefan and Vukan's uncle Miroslav, while he himself was married to their aunt. His attempt at independence was, however, unsuccessful, as when threatened with a crusade, he opted to make concessions. However, the more significant reaction came from the Bulgarian Tsar Kaloyan, who also harbored aspirations for the Morava Valley. His incursion into this region and into areas ruled by Vukan in 1203 caused widespread devastation and likely undermined domestic support for Vukan's rule. Stefan used this opportunity to return to power, and his cause was further helped by a civil war between the Hungarian king Emmerich and his brother Andrew. Stefan and Vukan continued to feud until an intervention by their younger brother, the monk Sava. In 1208 most likely, Sava exhumed the remains of Nemanja from his tomb in the Hilandar monastery to bring them to Serbia, where, upon their father's body, Stefan and Vukan were to swear oaths of peace. On this occasion, it was discovered that Nemanja's remains had been preserved and that they exuded a myrrh-like substance referred to as the oil of saints. Because of this, Stefan Nemanja was soon canonized as Saint Simeon the Myrroblite. Today, his remains are kept in his zadužbina of Studenica, a major pilgrimage site in Serbia. This event further legitimized the rule of the Nemanjić Dynasty, as Grand Prince Stefan and his successors could now claim descent from a saint. They continued to emulate Stefan Nemanja in his program of church construction, and the majority of them would also be proclaimed saints after death. For this reason, the Nemanjić dynasty is often referred to as Svetorodna loza, the sacred lineage. The rest of Stefan Nemanjić's reign was not without challenges. many of them a consequence of the disaster that had befallen the Byzantine Empire in 1204, when the Fourth Crusade veered off course from its path toward Jerusalem and turned against Constantinople. The Crusaders, who had hired the Venetians to transport them to the Holy Land but had failed to bring enough gold to pay for these services, were manipulated by Venice into attacking the Byzantine Empire, which for decades had been a bitter rival of this merchant and naval power. The rather unexpected sack of Constantinople, whose mighty walls had never before been breached, was largely the result of the drastic weakening of the Byzantine power after the death of Manuel I, as the decades preceding the Fourth Crusade had been marked by the internal struggles for the imperial throne and defeats at the hands of ambitious neighbors. The demise of the Byzantine Empire, which had previously suffered battlefield defeats yet had otherwise seemed impregnable, created a power vacuum in the Balkans. Over the following decades, ambitious rulers rose and fell, forging and breaking unlikely alliances in an effort to claim the empire's legacy. The chief combatants in this struggle were Venice, which seized several Greek islands, the Latin Empire, ruled by Crusaders and centered in Constantinople, the Second Bulgarian Empire, and two Byzantine successor states, the Empire of Nicaea in Western Asia Minor and the Despotate of Epirus in western Greece. The Crusaders also established smaller states in the Balkans, vassals of the Latin Empire, and there was another Byzantine successor state, the Empire of Trebizond, in northeastern Asia Minor. However, these played a secondary role in the chaos that followed. Stefan Nemanja was also drawn into this battle royale, although he remained on the sidelines, trying to balance between stronger powers and preserve his father's legacy. His expansion attempts, primarily in northern Albania, through the marriage of his daughter to an Albanian nobleman, and in the Macedonia region through support for a Bulgarian rebel, resulted in little or no gain, as Stefan was not strong enough to contend with either the Despotate of Epirus or the Second Bulgarian Empire for control of these lands. He did, however, recover parts of Zahumlje previously occupied by the Hungarians, and strengthen his authority in this region at the expense of his cousins, the descendants of his uncle Miroslav. Another domestic challenge was Vukan's eldest son. Vukan appears to have died not long after reconciling with Stefan, but his son continued the feud, ruling Zeta, formerly Duklja, with a great degree of autonomy. But, bit by bit, Stefan managed to diminish his power. Stefan also consolidated his rule along the coast by cooperating with the Catholic Archbishop of Bar, helping him wrest Catholic parishes from his rival, the Archbishop of Dubrovnik. The purpose of this was to ensure that Catholic priests operating in his territory answered to an authority within rather than outside his realm, and thus indirectly to him. An extensive Adriatic coastline also meant closer contact with Venice, with which Stefan forged an alliance by marrying Anna Dandolo, the granddaughter of the Venetian Doge Enrico Dandolo, the mastermind behind the fall of Byzantium. By marrying his firstborn son, Radoslav, to the daughter of Theodore I Angelos, he secured peace with this powerful ruler of Epirus to his south, who, in the 1220s, after liberating Thessaloniki from the Crusaders, became the leading contender among the Orthodox Balkan rulers to drive the invaders out of Constantinople. However, the chief accomplishments of Stefan's reign were his elevation to the rank of King of Serbia and the establishment of the autocephalous, that is, independent, Serbian Orthodox Church. Stefan's Catholic sympathies, reflected in his marriage to Anna Dandolo and his cooperation with the Archbishop of Bar, bore fruit in 1217 when Pope Honorius III sent him a royal crown, whereupon he became the first king of Serbia. Because of this, Stefan is often referred to as Prvovenčani, the first crowned. Now, those who have watched the previous episode and learned how, in 1077, Mihailo Vojislavljević became the first Serb to bear the royal title, may be wondering why Stefan is called the first crowned. The reasons are twofold. First, Mihailo's title was not King of Serbia, but King of Duklja. Second, Stefan was the first Serbian Orthodox ruler to be crowned king, which, with Serbia's definitive pivot toward orthodoxy during the reign of Stefan Nemanja, was more significant to contemporaries and later generations in terms of legitimacy. In fact, although the royal coronation greatly improved Stefan's standing among contemporary rulers, the crown coming from the Pope seems to have caused internal issues, prompting protests from the Orthodox clergy. The strongest voice of opposition appears to have been Stefan's brother Sava, who had by this point risen through the church hierarchy, serving as abbot of Studenica monastery and participating in the governance of Stefan's realm, particularly as a diplomat and jurist. Sava left Serbia and headed for Nicaea in Asia Minor, where the ecumenical patriarch of Constantinople resided, since his throne in Constantinople had been usurped by the Crusaders. In 1219, Sava met with Patriarch Manuel I and the Nicaean Emperor Theodore I Lascaris. He persuaded them that, if they wished to keep Serbia within the Byzantine, that is, Orthodox sphere of influence, they should grant the Serbian Church autocephaly and recognize his brother as the King of Serbia. This was a mutually beneficial arrangement. For the Patriarch and the Nicaean Emperor, it represented a blow to their Epirite rival for the Byzantine legacy, who was supported by the Archbishop of Ohrid, under whose ecclesiastical jurisdiction Serbia had previously fallen. For the two Nemanjić brothers, it meant independence from the Pope and reduced influence from the powerful Theodore I Angelos to their south. Upon his return to Serbia, Sava became the first Archbishop of the Serbian Orthodox Church, while Stefan appears to have been crowned again, this time with Sava performing the rite. If so, it is likely that this coronation took place at Stefan's zadužbina of Žiča, which became the seat of Serbian archbishops and the coronation site of later Serbian kings. Essentially, Stefan and Sava displayed impressive political acumen throughout this process, successfully exploiting the rivalry between larger powers to secure concessions for their own country. They would have to use this skill again soon, for around 1220, the Hungarian king Andrew II, displeased with Serbia's elevation to the rank of kingdom, threatened war. However, his participation in the Fifth Crusade had exhausted his strength, and Sava, who undertook a diplomatic mission to Hungary, managed to persuade him to make peace. The next important task Sava faced was organizing the church. He had already begun this work before returning from Nicaea. Along the way, he had visited Mount Athos and Thessaloniki, where he had prepared the so-called Nomocanon, a collection of Byzantine secular and ecclesiastical law that he adapted to Serbian conditions. This document, regulating the lives of both clergy and lay people, was of monumental significance, as it marked the transition from customary law to the written Byzantine legal system, which was itself rooted in the jurisprudence of classical Rome. Despite 2 centuries of hostility toward Byzantium, it was likely the empire's higher level of civilizational development, exemplified in part by its advanced legal system, that motivated the Nemanjić rulers to turn away from Catholicism and firmly integrate Serbia into the Orthodox cultural sphere. Sava's organization of the Serbian Orthodox Church involved more than legal reform. It also included the establishment of new bishoprics tasked with implementing his measures. Previously, there had been only 3 Orthodox bishoprics in Serbia, all headed by Greeks. Sava replaced them with Serbs, as the Greek bishops could have been used by the Archbishop of Ohrid and Theodore I Angelos to undermine Serbia's ecclesiastical and secular sovereignty. He then founded several new bishoprics, most of them near the kingdom's borders. Bishopric of Dabar, facing the Banate of Bosnia, was meant to counter the influence of the so-called Church of Bosnia, considered heretical by both Orthodox and Catholic authorities, while bishoprics on the frontier with Hungary and along the Adriatic coast were tasked with curbing Catholic influence. As a result of this, over time, the presence of Catholicism greatly diminished in large parts of the coastal regions. Thus, Sava, together with his father and brother through their patronage of the church, laid the first pillar of Serbian national identity. The Serbian Orthodox Church promoted a shared linguistic identity through the spread of Cyrillic literacy and the Serbian variant of the Old Church Slavonic language, while the veneration of the cults of Nemanjić saint kings, depicted as fathers of the people, fostered a sense of common origin among the inhabitants of the Nemanjić realm. With this, Sava and King Stefan completed the work begun by their father, Nemanja. When Stefan Nemanja had come to power in 1166, Serbia was still more tribal than feudal. In 1227, feeling that death was near, King Stefan emulated his father and abdicated the throne to become a monk. He died not long after, leaving behind a Serbia that, although not a leading power in the Balkans, was internationally recognized and possessed both its own church and the structure of a proper medieval monarchy. Sava, on the other hand, outlived his brother by 8 more years, adding further to his list of accomplishments by assisting his brother's successors and undertaking pilgrimages to Jerusalem and other holy sites in the Middle East. But let us leave those exploits for the next episode. Thank you for watching. If you would like to learn how the sons of King Stefan I crowned fared in the continuing struggle for the Byzantine legacy in the Balkans after the Fourth Crusade, and what was the outcome of a decades-long Game of Thrones played by his grandsons Dragutin and Milutin, subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified when the next episode is released. Until then, you can check out the other episodes about the history of Serbia on this channel.